Hopefully this will clear it up a little bit more. Okay, so here we have two ways of writing it.
Okay.
The first way, three ways of writing it. Oh, come on. Come on, hand. You know how to do this. Okay. The first line.
Oh, wow. It is all the same length.
It's straight.
Okay.
The first line is how we would say straight.
Okay.
So again, it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and it's an even subdivision of my quarter note. Remember, swing only applies to what happens between the quarter notes, i.e. eighth notes. Swing only is eighth notes. Any kind of triplet, any 16th notes, 64th notes, we do not swing. Because if it says an eighth note triplet, that's part of a triplet. It's not swung eighths anymore.
Okay.
It's a little confusing because swung eighths are triplets, but try to just let that happen in your brain.
But it's only with the eighth notes.
Only with the eighth notes. So the first line is straight, which I'm going to play it straight. So you go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4, 5, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 5. Okay, so the 16th, those are flat. Da 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 da.
Okay.
It's not like da 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 da. It's not some weird thing. That's how I used to think they went, but no, it's just da 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 da. And the reason for that, this is a very polyrhythmic music. Maybe is a word to describe it. It's a multi-subdivisional music.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take the main unit of the rhythm is a quarter note, right? So you can subdivide the quarter note into any number, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., right? And jazz is a heavily rhythmic music, and you must be a master of rhythm to really play it effectively. So you need to be able to divide that quarter note in all kinds of different ways. Right?
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
So when you see 16th notes, that's just dividing the quarter note in 4 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Da ga da ga da.
Okay.
And when you see eighth notes, I mean, some swing you can, like this tune actually on the record, they kind of go back and forth. The feel sort of loosely goes back and forth between straight and swing. It's part of what gives it its magic. So the second line, we're being very literal though here. So this second line is a literal interpretation of how a swung performance would go. So if you look, it's very complicated to look at, number one. You can see why they simplified it. But if you look at it and you count the beats in a straight fashion, what you have is all these little rests, right? So we go 4 rest, and 5 rest, and 1 rest, and 2 rest, and 3, okay?
Okay.
So the subdivision, not the subdivision, when we go to that basic level of the triplet, you can see how many beats are happening, and it's also easier to see that these 2 notes in the middle
are closer
together, and while these ones are further apart, right? So just even if you didn't know the rhythm, if you just kind of looked at it, da, 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 you can see that there's little groups, right?
Yeah.
The confusing thing at first is that the words that we use to describe this are the same. And the only thing that changes is you say, well, they're swung or they're straight. So in other words, if I'm going to say this is a straight melody, I'm going to say 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, right? But if it's swung, I'm still going to say the same thing, but the rhythm is going to sound different. 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3. So I'm like skipping. Da, da,
Okay.
da, 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 da. But really, there's all these beats. 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3. Okay? This is always happening no matter what, whether you like it or not. Okay? Bringing us to the third line. So in order to translate this first line, that's our literal interpretation, that's straight eighths. In order to get this to sound like our second line, all we have to do on the third line is identical to the first line, except it says swing eighths. So what that does is in your brain, you have to convert this third line to the second line.
Gotcha.
In your brain. So basically, if you can just squeeze those middle notes together a little bit, right? Because in that
you make the first two notes a triplet.
Yeah.
And then you make
all of them are triplets.
All of them triplets. And so you
But we count it. 4 and 5 and 1 and 2 and 3. You can see it sounds just like the second line, but it looks like the first line. And the reason that they do that, or that this is common practice, is it's pretty obvious to see how much less ink there is on that third line than the second line. And when most of what you used to do was handwrite things out,
makes sense.
you were looking to cut corners. And also just the comprehensibility. That's a good word.
There's a lot more business going on.
Yeah, it's just looking at that, you go, oh my God, what is that? But it's so much simpler and
Just
cleaner.
swing it.
Just say, oh, swing it. And you go, oh, okay, cool. And you know that in swing, the only thing that's going to be affected are the eighth notes.
Okay.
Nothing else. So you just see a long, and 9 times out of 10, it's just this. You know, I mean, it's in a jazz melody, you got, and every now and again you get a triplet.
Okay.
But then it's super obvious. Those are going to stick out because it's going to say 3.
Okay.
Right?
Cool.